I've known Ryan Parker for so long that sometimes I forget we're not actually brothers. We grew up 2 streets apart, played on the same little league team, sat through the same classes, and somehow ended up at the same college. Even now, in our 20s, the bond hasn't broken. If anything, it's stronger. His family treats me like I'm just another Parker, and most weekends, when schedules line up, I find myself at their house like I never left. That's how I ended up back there that summer, sleeping on the couch, laughing late with Ryan, and falling into an old rhythm that felt safe, comfortable, familiar. It should have been nothing more than another chapter in a lifelong friendship. But the thing about familiarity is that it can trick you into lowering your guard, and sometimes, when you least expect it, something shifts underneath what you thought was solid. The first night, everything seemed normal. We grilled burgers on the back porch, swapped stories about work, and let the hours pass with the kind of ease only two best friends share. By the time Ryan went to bed, I was sprawled on the couch, staring at my phone, ready to drift off. That's when I heard the creak of the stairs. Liam, Ryan's younger brother, had been a kid the last time I'd really paid attention to him. Awkward, quiet, the kind who hung back and watched. But as he stepped into the dim light of the living room, I had to blink twice. He wasn't the skinny teenager I remembered. His shoulders filled the doorway. His jaw was sharper, and there was a kind of quiet confidence in the way he moved that I hadn't expected. Couldn't sleep? I asked, shifting to sit up a little straighter. He shook his head, half smiling. Too much noise in here. He tapped the side of his head, then crossed the room and dropped into the armchair opposite me. For a while, we just talked. Small things, his classes, his summer job, what it was like now that Ryan was living mostly away from home. I listened, maybe more closely than I should have, noticing how his voice had deepened, how his words carried a weight that didn't belong to the kid I remembered. It wasn't anything yet, just conversation. But when the silence stretched and he leaned back, watching me in that quiet, steady way, something unsettled in my chest. I forced myself to look away, to scroll mindlessly through my phone until the feeling passed. The next day, it was more the same. Ryan and I went out, ran errands, caught up with old friends. By evening, we were back at the house, half drunk on cheap beer and the comfort of old jokes. At some point, Ryan disappeared upstairs, muttering something about needing sleep. I stayed behind, sitting at the kitchen table, staring out into the dark yard. Liam appeared again, barefoot, casual, leaning against the doorway like he belonged there. "You and Ryan still act like you're in high school," he said, teasing. I laughed. Some things never change. He crossed the room, poured himself a glass of water, and lingered by the counter. There was an energy in the air I couldn't place. Charged, almost daring. When I finally looked at him, he was already looking back, his eyes steady in a way that made my throat tighten. He broke the silence first. "You know, it's only us here right now." The words landed heavier than they should have. Just a simple fact, nothing more. But the way he said it, low, deliberate, with his gaze locked on mine, it meant something else. I laughed it off, shaking my head, trying to cut through whatever tension had crept in. But later, lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, the echo of those words wouldn't leave me. It's only us. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just late-night nerves, that Liam was still Ryan's little brother and nothing more. But when I finally drifted to sleep, it wasn't Ryan's laughter I carried into my dreams. It was Liam's voice, soft and steady, reminding me of a line I hadn't realized was already starting to blur. And when I woke the next morning, bleary-eyed and restless, I caught myself listening for footsteps on the stairs. Not Ryan's, but his. The next morning felt strangely heavy, though nothing on the surface had changed. Ryan was the same as always, cheerful and easygoing, dragging me along for coffee and errands. But underneath, I carried the echo of the night before, the words I couldn't shake. Every time I glanced toward the staircase, my mind pulled me back to Liam standing in the doorway, saying it in that low, certain voice. "It's only us." I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself I wouldn't give it any space. But pretending not to feel something only seemed to make it grow. By the afternoon, Ryan was pulled away by friends, an impromptu outing he insisted I skip. "You'll be fine here," he said, tossing me the keys in case I wanted to head out. Liam's around somewhere. The mention of his brother tightened something in my chest, though I forced a casual nod. Yeah, no problem. The house grew quiet after Ryan left, the kind of quiet that hummed with awareness. I lingered in the living room, trying to distract myself with TV, but every creak in the floorboards above set me on edge. Eventually, I heard footsteps descending. Liam entered, barefoot again, hair slightly much like he just rolled out of bed. He gave me a small, unreadable smile. Guess it's just us. The phrase hit me harder this time. My throat went dry, but I forced a chuckle. Yeah, looks like it. He crossed the room, slow and unhurried, before dropping onto the couch beside me. Not across the room like the night before. Too close, shoulders almost touching. I shifted slightly, but it didn't create enough space. He leaned back, arms stretched across the cushions, his presence impossible to ignore. You and Ryan, he said casually, eyes fixed on TV. You've always been inseparable. It's kind of intense. Yeah, I answered carefully. He's like family. And me? His tone sharpened just enough to make me turn my head. His eyes were on me now, steady, unblinking. I started fumbling. You're his brother. That makes you family, too. A small smirk touched his lips. That's not what I asked. The air thickened. I swallowed hard, heat rising in the back of my neck. Liam, I meant as a warning, but it came out softer than I intended. He leaned in slightly, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. Don't act like you don't feel it. I shook my head, forcing a laugh that sounded shaky. You don't know what you're talking about. But then his hand brushed mine, just a light touch, a deliberate test. My body stiffened, but I didn't pull away. His fingers lingered slow, steady, tracing the edge of my skin until goosebumps rose along my arm. Every part of me screamed to move, to put distance between us. But the longer I sat there, the weaker my reasons felt. He leaned closer, his voice dropping low. It's only us. No one will ever know. The words unraveled the last of my restraint. My pulse quickened, guilt colliding with something rawer, deeper. Before I could think better of it, I turned toward him, closing the inches that had been holding us apart. What followed was a blur of urgency, of quiet gasps and hurried touches, of walls I thought unbreakable crashing down. The living room became smaller, tighter, like the air itself were conspiring to keep us pressed together. It was reckless, forbidden, and yet every second of it felt impossibly right. When it ended, the silence was louder than anything I'd ever heard. I pulled back, heart racing, reality crashing in. I expected regret to hit me instantly, but all I felt was a lingering heat of his skin, the way his eyes locked onto mine, like we crossed into something neither of us could undo. He leaned back, satisfied, a quiet boldness in his expression. Told you, he whispered. It's only us. I couldn't speak. My chest rose and fell with shallow breaths as I stared at the floor, guilt beginning to creep in at the edges. Ryan's face flashed in my mind, his trust, his laughter, the bond we'd built over years. And here I was, sitting in his house, holding a secret that would shatter everything if it ever came to light. The sound of the front door opening jolted us both. Ryan's voice carried into the house, cheerful, oblivious. Liam and I sprang apart, settling back into careful positions, as though the last few minutes could be erased if we just pretended hard enough. When Ryan appeared in the doorway, grinning, bag of food in his hand, I forced a smile that felt brittle. He tossed the bag onto the table, laughing about something that had happened on his trip out. I nodded along, my throat dry, barely able to meet his eyes. Beside me, Liam sat relaxed, casual, as though nothing had happened. But every time I dared to glance at him, his gaze was waiting for mine, steady and certain, a silent reminder of the promise he'd spoken. It's only us. And though I tried to bury it, I knew there was no undoing what had been done. The night after it happened, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt Liam's touch again, the way his voice lingered against my skin. But then Ryan's laugh would echo in my head, pulling guilt through me like a knife. I told myself it had been a mistake, a lapse, something that could be shoved into a locked corner of memory and forgotten. But forgetting is never that easy. The next morning, Ryan was in good spirits, talking over breakfast, nudging me about old memories. I smiled where I had to, laugh when expected, but my eyes drifted across the table without permission. Liam sat there, calm, composed, stirring his coffee like the night before it hadn't happened. When our gazes met for a second, his eyes didn't waver. He held me there until I had to look away. It rattled me. I thought he might regret it, avoid me, pretend it never happened. But instead, he carried himself with a quiet certainty, like a secret we now shared had given him more power than I wanted to admit. Throughout the day, the smallest moments became dangerous. Ryan would run upstairs to grab something, and in that fleeting gap, Liam would brush past me just a little too close, his fingers grazing mine as if by accident. At one point, I stepped into the hallway, and he leaned against the opposite wall, watching me with an expression that said everything without a word. "You don't have to look so guilty," he whispered once when Ryan was in the next room. I froze. "You don't understand. This can't happen again." But he only tilted his head, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "Can't or won't?" That question chased me the rest of the day. By evening, Ryan suggested we all watch a movie together. He sprawled on the recliner, while Liam and I ended up sharing the couch. I sat stiff, trying to keep space between us, but somewhere during the film, Liam shifted closer. His knee brushed against mine under the blanket. To anyone else, it was nothing, but to me, it felt like a live wire pressed to my skin. I tried to steady my breathing, forcing my eyes to the screen, but inside, my pulse thundered. When Ryan laughed at something, glancing over at me, I forced a weak laugh back, praying he couldn't see the truth trembling just beneath the surface. Later, when Ryan went upstairs, muttering about being exhausted, I felt a surge of relief. But the relief evaporated as soon as I realized Liam hadn't moved from his place beside me. The silence stretched heavier with each passing second. "You feel it too," he said quietly, no hesitation in his tone. "Liam, don't." He leaned closer, voice steady. "I meant it when I said it's only us. I don't regret it. Not 1 second." The conviction in his voice made my chest ache. Because as much as I wanted to deny him, as much as I wanted to hold on to loyalty, I couldn't pretend he was wrong. I felt it too. That pull, that heat, that dangerous need that had already crossed a line once and was threatening to do it again. I stood quickly, pacing the room just to create distance. "You don't understand what's at stake. He trusts me. He sees me as family." "Maybe that's a problem," Liam said, rising to his feet. His eyes locked onto mine with something fierce behind them. "I don't see you as family. I never did." The words gutted me, because in them was the truth I'd been too afraid to name. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The house was too quiet, the air too thick, every second daring me to choose. My mind screamed that this was betrayal, that if Ryan ever found out, it would destroy everything. But my body remembered the night before, the way Liam's hands had felt like gravity itself, pulling me toward a place I didn't know I wanted to go. Finally, I sank back onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. I don't know how to do this. Liam sat beside me, his voice softer now, almost tender. "You don't have to figure out tonight. Just don't lie to yourself about what's already here." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because deep down I knew he was right. Later, lying in the dark, Ryan's steady breathing from upstairs carried to the house like a cruel reminder. And yet, what lingered louder was Liam's voice in my head, firm and certain. "It's only us." I wanted to believe I could carry the weight of both, Ryan's trust and Liam's secret. But as I stared at the ceiling, restless and guilty, I knew one truth had already rooted itself too deep to ignore. What happened between Liam and me wasn't an accident. It wasn't a fleeting mistake. It was something I couldn't walk away from, no matter how much I told myself I should. And in that realization, the story stopped being about what I had done. It became about what I was becoming.